I've been working on my mitered square cabled corner, which I'm playing with right now as I talk to you. What an interesting technique. It's been really a beautiful result. I'll put up here so you can see. Ignore the bobble. It was part of the pattern, but I think it looks awful, so I won't be adding a bobble to my finished cable. I think you can see it all right. So it's really amazing how this mitered square in the center turns the work so I get this fabulous corner. And what's really great about it is, let me get it on this shoulder. You can see it sits really nicely on my shoulder. And it'll, I should have blocked it. I didn't block it. I'm lazy. But it sits really nicely on my shoulder. And I'll be able to do the whole collar this way by just continuing the cable around and then do another shoulder over on this side. So really, it's just taking what would have been four to create a square to create an oval by doing just two corners. Now, my only concern with this was that it's really hard to describe. So when I'm designing something, I'm always thinking about, there's this tension between my imagination, the thing I want to create, and the pattern. So I don't just do this purely for me. Sometimes I do just knit for myself. But when I'm designing something for a hand dyer or to create a pattern of any kind, I have to think about what the design is and how am I going to translate that in a way that makes sense to knitters. And as I was knitting this, like in my mind, it's very simple, but I know from having experience of writing many patterns now, what seems simple is sometimes really hard to describe. And in this case, I decided to do the shadow short rows to create that corner. So that's how you're creating the shaping, is by doing short rows through the center here. So you start up, you do some short rows shrinking it, and then you do some short rows growing it, and that's how you get this lovely corner. The problem is, how am I going to describe it in a way that I'm not going to have 10,000 people? No, 10,000 people don't buy my patterns, but a good group of my pattern knitters coming back to me saying, I don't understand how this works. Now, no matter what I do and how simple I think a pattern is, there's usually at least a few people who contact me with problems in the pattern, and mostly it's stuff I can't anticipate. But when I'm describing a shadow short row, so shadow short rows going one way, it's easy. I can, it's a very simple pickup. And I can do a little tutorial video, and I'll probably do a tutorial video. And the reason I do those is because sometimes words don't make sense on the paper at all. So when I'm describing how you pick up the stitch from below and you knit it and then you put it back on your needle, that can be just gobbledygook in words, but if I do it quickly in a video, it's like, oh. And there are people that do learn by words, but a lot more people learn visually. So this is all me babbling to say that I absolutely want to do this technique, but I'm really nervous about communicating how to do the shadow short rows, especially on the second half, where as you come back, you're having to do a double shadow short row, which creates 3 legs to the stitch. And instead of a simple knit 2 together, you're having to stitch on top, and then you've got 3 legs to the stitch, and then you have to knit those 3 legs together. It's very simple for me, and I think most people, once they've done it once, it's like, oh, okay, no problem. But it's a bit more complexity in a cable that is already fairly complex. Like, I will not be doing this cable. This is from the Celtic Rowan pillow pattern. I'll be creating my own cable, but I want it to be a fairly complex, beautiful Celtic knotwork cable. So it means that already it'll be a fairly complex cable. You add to that the shadow short rows that I have to describe. And in the pattern, I have to describe, or in the chart, I have to do it in a certain way too. So it's pretty overwhelming, the thought, not just of designing this, but of preparing the design for knitters to be able to follow my pattern. So these are the things I'm wrestling with. I, um, think I'm going to go with, yes, I'm going ahead with these mitered corners. I'm hoping there are enough knitters out there that are like me that have knit a lot of cables or a lot of things and are looking for new and interesting techniques. So I'm hoping that that's going to work out for this mitered square. So it'll be a bit difficult in the beginning. As I said, I'll probably end up having to do a tutorial just to make sure that I don't have a bunch of questions coming in. I do like that people feel comfortable to reach out to me, but I think pattern designers will admit once you've got a pattern out there and it's been out there for a while, it can be really frustrating to have someone asking you how to get through a pattern because we've spent so much time creating these patterns. And it feels sometimes like you're doing a knitting class. So, absolutely, if you think there's an error in the pattern, contact me. But I'll ask you, hopefully, if it's not a obvious error, if you just are struggling with the technique in the pattern, please go to your local yarn store. And if you don't, maybe you have a group online you can contact because, it can be really frustrating to feel like I'm having to teach someone how to knit, um, on top of having designed a pattern. That being said, I do reach out to me. I feel bad if I don't respond, and I feel bad if someone's stuck on my pattern. So I don't want to say don't reach out to me. Just if you have a problem with the pattern and you're not sure whether it's you or the pattern, double check with your local yarn store before you get a hold of me. Like your local yarn store owners, you hate me right now. So yeah, that was my little rant on that. Sorry about that. I wasn't expecting to say that, but you know. However, I'm gonna try and make this pattern as clear as possible. I work really hard. I have a tech editor and I get test knitters so that never, well, when I first in the beginning, I just throw out a pattern. Now that I know what kind of damage that can do to my reputation, I get a tech editor and I definitely get test knitters, especially in a sweater where I'm going to be having to do different sizes, right? So that just reminds me that there's a couple other things that I'm really concerned about with this pattern. So now that I've got the idea for the shoulder, the question is, here's my shoulder. How am I going to shape this section of the sleeve, right? So it looks like I could raglan here. I'm really kind of tempted to try and figure out a way of doing a yoke, for this, but I'm not quite sure if that will work either. It's kind of like a saddle sleeve, but you see where I'd normally put a cap, there's this piece that's gone right into it, right? So, maybe my cable will be slightly smaller so that the shoulder won't be quite so big, especially if I've got to do smaller size versions of this pattern. I'm going to want to be able to have it fit the shoulders of whoever is going to work it, right? And maybe it's just a pattern that people with small shoulders won't be able to do. I don't know. But anyway, now I've got this figured out. How I want to do the collar. I have to figure out how to do the sleeve. Because you see, I've got this section here that is not a normal way we would see a sleeve. So normally you'd have the cap running this way. So now I've got to put my thinking cap on and figure out how to fill in this gap here, especially since I think I want to make this top down in one piece if possible, just because I know people don't like to sew. So I like the fit of a sewn sweater, but I know a lot of people now, this is hard enough. This is going to be hard enough. They don't want to figure out how to sew it all together. So I want to create it with as little sewing as possible. That will be the next mental challenge for me. So I think what's going to happen is I am going to um, start working with the yarn that I have for this pattern that I'm designing. So because I really want to get a sense, this is the Loving Path. So, oh look at, there's a little rainbow. I have a crystal that throws rainbows everywhere, so you're getting a little rainbow on that. So yeah, this is the Loving Path, and it's their Aran weight, which is the non-superwash merino. So this is a hand wash, guys, and you can see it's just it's like a hint au gray in there. So just a little bit of color for that, but I'm hoping it will make the cables pop. So I guess I'm going to move on to this. I see my ball winder didn't work. I'm going to work on, I think I'm going to start working with this yarn. I might go back to this one and, figure out, but I think I need to start getting a feel for this. So this has got a different texture, even though they're both 100% wool. This is being merino is much softer, and it's going to lay differently on my shoulders. So I really need to get going with, I'm talking myself into, I need to get going with the actual yarn I'm going to be working with so that I can really get a sense of what the sweater's going to look like. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. I will check in again and show off what is going on the next phase of the sweater. I think the next phase I have to do is just do the whole collar and then figure out how I'm going to fit in the shapes. I know a lot of people do drawings. I don't tend to do drawings for or to figure it out, so maybe next time I'll do drawings. I don't know. I think I just need the fabric. I need to actually physically get my hands on it in order to understand it. So that, still babbling. Sorry, it goes on longer than I anticipated. Thanks for stopping in, and I hope you come back for part 3 when I show you the completed collar and my decisions about what I'm going to do with it.